何者だお前は。
趣味でヒーローをやっているものだ。
The inspiring life story of Saitama, the man called One Punch Man. The concept of heroes has always been there, and we've always been surrounded by it. Heroes like Superman and Batman have always been a part of our childhood. But if we're talking about anime, then there are not so many mainstream heroes now, are there? There are characters like Luffy, Naruto and Goku, but these characters can't be labelled as just heroes. They've got their own specific titles. Be that as it may, almost 6 years ago, back in 2015, this finally changed, as the anime medium introduced a hero with the anime called One Punch Man. The name of this hero? Saitama. And as time passed by, he went on to compete with Superman and Batman in terms of popularity. It isn't a stretch to say that our hero Saitama is also the gateway for many people who eventually get into anime. His powers don't involve superficial things like lasers or tools. It's just a lot simpler than that. With strength that's enough to send waves across the globe, legs that can make the trip all the way from the moon back to the earth in a split second, and speed that's practically imperceivable, he is, in every sense of the word, invincible. And as they say, behind every great man, there's an equally great story. From the moment he vowed to become a hero, till the day he became strong enough to defeat most and every kind of enemy opponent with a single punch, and everything that happened in between. Let's talk about it all.
圧倒的な力ってのはつまらないもんだ。
Not many people know about this, but there's an extra chapter in Volume 1 of the One Punch Man manga, the chapter that goes by the name 200 Yen. It's the 8.5th chapter. Back when he was a child, Saitama used to watch superhero shows and he always dreamt of becoming a hero. On the second day of middle school, when he was just 12 years old, he's in his class reading a manual while the other students talk about how two seniors ridiculed a first-year student who was just trying to protect some students from getting bullied by them. What's interesting about this first-year student was that he called himself the bicycle commuter, and he tried his best to stand up against the bullies because he was on the side of justice. What do you think? Was this boy the hero that will soon be known as the legendary Moomin Rider? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.
何ボソボソほざいてるの？命乞い？それでもやるしかないんだ。勝てる勝てないじゃなく、ここで俺はお前に立ち向かわなくちゃいけないんだ。
Now, while this topic was going on in his class, Saitama wasn't particularly interested in that conversation. He was just passing time by reading whatever he was reading. Later, when he's home, he's lying around on his bed while the TV mentions how the number of monsters have been surging for the past few years and how we need a system to ensure the safety of the citizens. Saitama was in thought. Be that as it may, he was also just lying around and ignoring all the homework he had to do. The next day, the homeroom teacher lectures him on how important it is to do your homework. He was listening, but he didn't quite understand why the teacher was so assertive about it. He ended up talking back, which got him into a little bit of trouble. The teacher told him to meet him after school, which obviously he didn't like. Saitama had a very serious look on his face as he returned to his seat. Later, school ends and he's on his way to meet the teacher, but those two bullies stop him and ask for money. He tells them he doesn't have any and braces himself to fight. He acted like the man he was. Though for the 12-year-old Saitama, these bullies were too much. They beat him up and they take the 200 yen that he had in his pocket. For context, 200 yen amounts to roughly a couple of dollars. That's why the bullies ridiculed him even more because of the good-for-nothing that he was. But then, as he's getting mocked, a monster enters the chat. He bumps into Saitama like a bull. The two bullies are terrified, but the monster just takes the money and leaves. Now this didn't sit right with Saitama at all. He was tired of being weak. All those dreams he had of being a hero, were they all just delusions? Was he fated to be weak for the rest of his life? Something inside of Saitama triggers. He runs after the monster, desperately trying to get his 200 yen back. It wasn't that he didn't want to lose his 200 yen. It wasn't that. It was more like he didn't want to just sit by as someone or something took his money. He didn't want to be weak. He chased the monster for a while, but at one point the monster just turned and bumped right into him. Saitama was out for an hour. When he woke up, the monster was already dealt with. In the end, he never got his 200 yen back, and the teacher lectured him once again, more so than before. And then, As he's on his way back home, Saitama's mind is full of thoughts. His monologue clearly represented the current state of his existence. He says that he might not be fit to live in this society. He doesn't have the faintest idea of how to live in this world. All he ever does is lose. Will he ever be able to live his life properly when he's this weak? These were the thoughts that lurked around in the mind of the 12-year-old Saitama. Fast forward 10 years later, we see a bit of the day Saitama became a hero for the first time. This flashback is shown in the very first episode. Saitama is a 22-year-old unemployed man. He's hunting for a job, but with no luck. All he's doing is working part-time at a convenience store. But then one day, after coming back from another failed interview, he encounters a monster called Crablante. However, when the crab sees the look in Saitama's eyes, he decides to spare him. Maybe it's because the crab somehow related to Saitama's lifeless eyes. So he spares him and goes back to find the boy with a cleft like a chin. Saitama doesn't think much of it, but he does see the child before the crab, and a few moments later, the crab's also there. Now, as the man who once sought out to be a hero, as the person who was sick of being so weak all the time, Saitama's faced with a number of dilemmas. The situation isn't as grave as it seems to be actually. In fact, the reason the crab wants the kid dead is because he drew something on him with a permanent marker. But that didn't change the fact that he legit wanted to kill the boy. As this plays out, something inside of Saitama triggers once again, just like it did 10 years ago. Only this time, he actually finds a way. He literally pulls out the crab's eyeball with just his tie and renders the crab useless. That day, the boy Saitama saved was the grandson of a wealthy man, and hearing the story makes the man decide to create the Hero Association. But neither the world nor the other heroes, not even Saitama himself, knows that it was him who became the foundation of the world's strongest association. However, starting that day, Saitama decided he's not just suited for a normal life. He swore to become strong, and as we saw in the 3rd episode of the 1st season, every day he did 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run. In summer, he didn't turn on the air conditioner, and in winter, he didn't turn on the heat. He survived on bananas. He made himself uncomfortable, and gradually, he started to feel some change. As it's mentioned in the manga, on the 300th day of his training, he'd already become aware of the fact that he'd become strong. Then, there was a strong monster who was looking for a strong opponent. Saitama was in the middle of his run, and yet, for the very first time in forever, Saitama destroyed a monster with a single punch. By this point, Saitama was already superhuman. After 1.5 years of his training, he'd become bold, but let's not forget that he'd become strong too. Obviously, fans have wondered how he became so strong with just a standard level training manual. It's been explained that through the training and his will, Saitama was able to completely remove the limiter that exists in humans. Unlike other people who become stronger and stronger, by expanding their limiter, he completely removed it and became strength itself. It's such a shame that he's yet to receive the proper amount of respect in the actual story, but as far as us fans are concerned, Saitama's the world's strongest hero.
必殺マジシリーズマジ殴り
There you go, that was Saitama's story, his beginning and how he became the strongest. I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section down below.